trustworthiness. Andrew Wilkie says many Australians are feeling, quote, very let down by the PM, and fellow anti-gambling campaigner Senator Nick Xenophon has accused the Prime Minister of, quote, backstabbing the person who put her in office. The Prime Minister joins us in our Parliament House studios now. Prime Minister, good morning, Happy New Year.
Good morning, Fran, and Happy New Year to you too, and welcome back.
Welcome to the Year of the Dragon. Prime Minister, you've torn up a written deal with Andrew Wilkie to introduce compulsory pre-commitment limits on poker machines. You've welched on a deal.
Well, Fran, let's be very clear what's happened here. What has happened is it became apparent that there wasn't the support in the House of Representatives to deliver Andrew Wilkie's plan, to deliver his plan for full mandatory pre-commitment. So I have worked to make sure that we get far-reaching poker machine reforms through the Parliament. Indeed, it will be the first time ever that the national government has taken any steps in a major way to deal with problem gambling, any steps to legislate to address the real pressures that problem gambling puts on the shoulders of Australian families. And so we've announced a comprehensive package of change. Machines will be changing so that they will have pre-commitment technology on them. We will have a full trial of mandatory pre-commitment to see whether it can work to help problem gamblers. We will also be limiting the amount of cash people can get out of ATM machines in gaming venues, so they can't just keep going back and back and back for more and more and more. And we'll also be ensuring machines have warnings on them, and we'll be putting extra support behind counselling.
But Prime Minister, the fact is you signed a deal with Andrew Wilkie. You promised to introduce this legislation into the Parliament by May and introduce the policy into operation by 2014. Now you're not doing that. Why should anyone trust you? How can voters believe what you say?
Well, Fran, government's about getting things done. And the circumstance here is legislation for full mandatory pre-commitment would fail in the Parliament.
But you never even put it to a vote. Why not test it on the floor of the Parliament and argue your case? I think voters find it hard to understand how you can make that assessment without having given it a go.
Well, Fran, you are aware, as I am, of the statements made by the independents and crossbenchers on this matter, and it is apparent that legislation would fail. In those circumstances, we've got a choice. Do you go to the Parliament, have something fail, get absolutely nothing done, make no difference to problem gambling, no difference to the usage of poker machines in Australia, or do you act to get something
make it clear
done?
The strength of the government's commitment on this. I mean, it's
well,
not impossible.
No one should doubt, Fran, the strength of the government's commitment on this. We will make sure that there is the biggest package of change ever delivered by a national government on problem gambling in this nation's history. So no one should doubt the government's commitment. But government is about getting things done, Fran. It's about acting. It's about delivering change. And we will deliver change rather than go to the Parliament, get a piece of legislation voted down, and not one problem gambler in one gaming venue in Australia experiences any change in their lives as a result.
It just seems, though, like perhaps the government's prepared to, forfeit without actually giving it a go. This is an unusual parliament. Everyone understands that. Minority government is not easy. It's not impossible, though, is it, that unusual results could come in a parliament like this if a government argues convincingly on the floor of the parliament. You might be able to persuade someone from the other side to your cause.
Fran, I have worked on this patiently alongside Jenny Macklin. I have had direct discussions with the crossbenchers. They have said the same things to me privately that they have said publicly. Your question is basically premised on the assumption that we haven't sought hard testing of people's views. Well, we have had discussions in private, we have seen the statements made by the independents in public, and it is apparent that there is not the support in the House of Representatives for Andrew Wilkie's plan. Now, in those circumstances, you can say, well, let's get nothing done. Let's just take a piece of legislation, watch it go down. Nothing changes for problem gambling. Nothing changes for Australian families that really have the mortgage and the rent and the food for the kids, put down poker machines. Or you can take the approach I'm taking, which is government is about delivering. It's about getting things done, and we will deliver the most far-reaching set of changes measures on problem gambling ever delivered by a national government.
You see, that's your problem, isn't it? You say government's about delivering, but you have a perception problem here because, you know, you've already been branded with a broken promise on the carbon tax. Here's another broken promise. Doesn't this just entrench the public perception that you can't be trusted, that you don't deliver on what you promise?
I think the Australian people look to governments to deliver. They want to see practical changes in their lives. They want to know when they go to the local hospital that it's improving and it's got more funds and more doctors. They want to know when the children go to school that the school is improving and there's a real focus on teacher quality and literacy and numeracy. They want to know across the board that the government is doing the right thing to keep people in work, to manage the economy in the interests of working people. And on the issue of problem gambling, I think Australians are concerned. Most Australians would know someone.
60% of Australians support action on gambling reform.
And exactly, Fran, I'm agreeing with you. Most Australians are concerned. Many Australians would personally know someone in their family, in their workplace, through a club that they're involved in, through a church or a trade union they're involved in, would know someone who's struggled with pokies addiction. And what Australians will see as a result of the government's legislation is change. And I'm very aware of the problems that families face when addiction to poker machines take over. I've seen it in my own electorate in Melbourne's West, where people do start off the day with good intentions. They're not going to go gaming at all, and then they find themselves in a gaming venue. Then they're only going to limit their losses, and by the time they walk away from the machine, they've done all of their dough. Well, the approach we're taking will mean that there's pre-commitment technology on the machines. People will be able to take a decision to limit their losses. We will be trialling full mandatory pre-commitment. They won't be able to go and get endless supplies of cash out of the ATM machine, and there will be more counsellors available to support people who have a problem and whose family is saying to them, please get some help.
With respect, Prime Minister, the approach you're taking is a trial on pre-commitment technology, which you've said previously and consistently you're absolutely committed to, that doesn't start until next year. Why wait 13 months to begin a trial? Where's the force of the commitment there?
Well, Fran, we've got to deal with the practical realities of the world in which we live. First and foremost, Andrew Wilkie has also supported a trial in the past.
I'm not arguing against a trial, I'm arguing why can't you
and I'll answer your question, Fran, but let's just make sure we get all of the facts on the table. Andrew Wilkie has supported a trial. Under Andrew Wilkie's plan, if it was implemented, the change to full mandatory pre-commitment would happen after the next election in any event. On the timing of the trial, we will be trialling in the ACT. Every machine needs to be changed. Well, every machine needs to be in the right place for pre-commitment technology. Some of them would probably have it now, but every machine that doesn't have it needs it put on. Then the software to interlink all of the machines needs to be brought into force. We've taken very careful advice on how long that would take, and it will take till next year. That's just the practical reality.
Well, it seems, though, that it's pretty convenient timing for a government that was being absolutely hammered by this issue in many of its marginal seats, because this trial won't even be evaluated until June 2014. That's the trial. Well, after the next election, if a coalition government's in place by then, well, as Tim Costello says, this pre-commitment hangs on a wing and a prayer, doesn't it?
Well, number one, Fran, we can't wish away the facts, and the facts are we have been advised that it is not possible to start this trial earlier than 2013 due to the large amount of set-up work that needs to be done. Now, you can pretend that that's not a reality, that's not a fact. I'm Prime Minister of the country, I deal in facts, that's the facts. Number two, in terms of the role of the next Parliament, even under Andrew Wilkie's plan, full mandatory pre-commitment would have come into effect in the next Parliament. So
yes, but
that
it would
time,
be legislated in this Parliament.
And Fran, you know Parliaments can make and unmake legislation. And so the move to full mandatory pre-commitment would have been in the next Parliament in any event.
That's Prime Minister Julia Gillard talking to Frank Kelly on Radio National's breakfast program this morning, defending the government's decision to water down planned reformed poker machine policy, saying that the government's actions that they're now going to take is still nonetheless a big step forward in terms of tackling the issue.